This is the Witness to War project, Serving a Nation. I'm here with Tyler Hoffman and Tate Tidewan, and our veteran is Sean Lalley. So, how old were you when you decided that you wanted to join the military?
It was always kind of something that I had planned. I have a lot of military members in my family. So my dad was a Marine, my grandpa was a Marine, my other grandfather in the Army. So I kind of wanted to at a really young age, and I kind of lost interest for a little while and thought I wanted to go to college. But then as I got closer, I decided that I didn't want to go to college. At that point, I wanted to take a different route and join the military. So something I always kind of wanted to do.
Was there a person in your family that inspired you to join the military?
Yeah, like I said, my father being a Marine, my grandpa being a Marine. I have an uncle that's a Marine. My cousin's in the Marines. So it's funny that I went to the Army because we all have this little competition. They used to make fun of me till I became a Ranger. So.
How did your family respond to you going into the military?
Most of them supported it fully, coming from a military background. I think my mom was a little bit nervous and wondered why I was going to join the military. But other than that, I had complete support, and they were a big support system throughout my time in the military.
What was it like arriving in Afghanistan?
When I got there, it was pretty surreal. I left on July 7th in 2010, and total it's about a 20-hour flight. So I was able to sleep most of it. We stopped in Germany after about 8 hours, and then we got back on. What we rode on was a C-130 over there. We didn't ride a regular commercial aircraft, so we're not sitting upright in commercial seats or lay our sleeping bags out and sleep on the bottom of this huge aircraft called a C-130. It was a pretty cool way to flying in style. And when I got there, it was the middle of the night. Everyone there was trying to move at a real quick pace, and they're like, all right, time to unload your stuff, and this is your new home. I stayed in basically a big canvas tent with like 12 other guys. So it was pretty cool arriving there. Like I said, it was the middle of the night. There was sand blowing everywhere. It's kind of, in some ways, what you would picture.
So beforehand, what was some of the training you went through to prepare yourself for entering Afghanistan, and what were some of the physical training you had?
So as far as training, there was a few different phases leading up to becoming a Ranger. I started in boot camp as all Army soldiers do. That was it was initially 9 weeks, and then since I was going for infantry, at this point I didn't know I was going to become a Ranger. I was just infantry at that time. So another 5 weeks of infantry school. And after that, I went to airborne school, and I'll break each of them down a little bit more. Airborne school is a 3-week course where you learn how to jump out of airplanes. And from that point, I was allowed to volunteer for RASP, which is the Ranger Assessment Selection Program, and definitely the most hardcore, intensive part of the training. It's 8-week. You have to volunteer and you have to qualify as well, meaning my physical standards had to be above a certain percentile, and also my written tests had to be above a certain percentile. So basic training was, it was physically demanding, but I was already in pretty good shape. I'd prepared myself well, and I've always, played sports and boxed and lifted weights, so I was kind of prepared physically, mostly. I think the hardest part about basic was when we, started doing the ruck marching. That's nothing that I've done before, where you throw on a 60-pound pack and you go for a 12-mile walk. walk, jog, more like. But basic training, it was challenging, but I was able to just say, you know, this is my life, and I was really into it. I mean, you have to want to be there to complete something like that. So that's where we started our, you know, our basic marksmanship, you know, learning basic medical skills, basic movements with platoons, a lot of yelling at you all day, every day. I remember like my third day there, I counted how many push-ups we did. It was well over 1,000. So just basically all day. I was like, I need to write this down, tell people about it. So after I graduated that, you know, a lot of guys can choose to go to their unit from there. They're assigned a unit. But my next step was to go to airborne school to further my training. So airborne's 3 weeks, which sounds pretty crazy. I mean, 3 weeks and they teach you how to jump out of a plane, so it's not like they give you a whole bunch of time. It's something we would build up on, where we'd start just jumping off these little elevated boxes and learning how to fall when you hit the ground. And a reason you have to learn to fall is because an airborne jump, it's not like skydiving where you come in and you land softly. You're dropping at like 20 feet per second. So if you could imagine like a telephone pole to the ground in a second, because it's designed as a combat jump, so you have to be able to land quickly. So from the boxes, we learned how to fall, and then we used this zip line system where you strap up basically a mock parachute, you go down the zip line and practice falling at the end of that. And then from there, we basically got all our gear together, and we learned how to jump out of the planes. We did 5 jumps in 1 week, which was a pretty crazy feeling, especially the first time I did it. We're just like flying up to the sky, we're like, all right, so you're jumping, you jump by yourself. It's not like you have a tandem skydive instructor with you. It's like, all right, now it's time to go. So that was pretty cool. And then after that 3 weeks, like I said, I volunteered for RASP, which was very intense, and it was minimal sleep, constantly being kind of tortured by your cadre. You know, they would come out and play mental games with us and wake us up in the middle of the night and make us clear out our entire rooms and lay them out in this gravel pit. And if one thing was moved 1 inch to one side or 1 inch to the other, everything gets put back upstairs, and do that all night. You know, things like that. Sleep for 45 minutes. And this is the first 4 weeks. They make it as hard as they can. They want people to quit. So if you want to quit, they don't mind. They're like, if you want to quit, you know, you can leave at any time, and you can go on to what we called the regular army, and join a unit there. Is this good pace? Okay. And so those first 4 weeks, their goal is to get as many people out as possible. We did this thing called Coal Range, where 5 days, it's the hardest part about this training. For 5 days, you stay out in the woods, and you sleep in a big sand pit that's surrounded by sandbags. You got like, I think we probably had, I don't know, we started with 148, and by this point, we were probably down to 90. Maybe at that point, so we already had that many people drop out, like 50 people or so. So Coal Range, every day, you do 4 hours of land nav in the woods, trying to find different points, shooting an azimuth, and you know, with a map and a compass, old school style. No GPSs, we had to learn the hard way. And then 4 hours at night, and in between that, all you get is 1 meal a day. Sleep for 45 minutes a night for 5 nights straight. So you're literally delirious by the end. And they're making you do games all day, you could say. And the whole point of it is to make you try to quit. So that after that, the second 4 weeks of training in RASP is all dedicated to skills, so that you're prepared for Ranger Battalion when you get there. So some of the stuff that you do, you have to become certified in advanced rifle and pistol marksmanship. So we did a lot of different shooting where, we're setting up on walls different ways and doing different types of drills where you might have to run up to a certain target, put so many rounds on it, move up, take your sidearm, do stuff like that. So we did the advanced pistol and rifle marksmanship. We practiced night firing, so under what we called NODs, night vision, night ocular devices, and we learned how to fire under those. After that, we learned advanced defensive driving, so in Humvees, taking them off-roading and learning how to drive them tactically and defensively, and how to use them in certain situations you might encounter overseas. Part of it was rappelling, so rappelling down, 70-foot tower down to the ground, rope rappelling, and then combatives, which is, we did a lot of hand-to-hand jiu-jitsu type, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, things like that, how to handle a detainee. And then, that's also RFR, which is Ranger First Responder, how to do tourniquets and how to put people onto carriers if need be and insert IVs. And these are all the things that you learn in Phase 2 of RASP, the second 4 weeks. So that pretty much lays out my training.
What went through your mind when you picked up a gun?
It wasn't the first time I had fired a gun. I didn't grow up, using firearms all the time. I didn't come from a family of hunters or anything, but I'd handled a few guns, and I guess I was excited. It was awesome. I got an assault rifle in my hand, and it's a pretty cool thing, and we have thousands of rounds that we're allowed to fire, so in a controlled environment, it's pretty exciting.
What was it like arriving in Afghanistan?
I think you asked me that one.
Oh. What was a typical day in Afghanistan?
During the day, I slept. So my typical day was sleeping. We would sleep probably about, 7, 8 in the morning till, 3 in the afternoon, something like that. And then we'd get up. I would go, usually just take a shower, get ready for the day. It was a nice cold shower, actually, where I was. Some places have the luxury of warm showers, but we had the cold ones. Because being Rangers, they always like to put us in the worst spots where no one else is. And then we would go out on missions. Most nights. Nights that I didn't go out on missions, we'd work out, we'd play poker, hang out, watch DVDs on little laptops, stuff like that, just if we weren't out.
What were the friendships you had with the men you fought with?
Definitely really good friendships. I have really good friends from high school that I still, hang out with and talk with and everything like that. But it's just it's a different type of bond, because when someone literally has to protect your life, you have to really have a lot of trust in that person. And it goes both ways. I would do anything for any of the guys that I served with, and I still stay in contact with them. We have a true brotherly bond. I have friends that live in Texas. I could call them and be like, hey, I got to stay at your house for a week. Give him 5 minutes notice, and he'd be like, all right, and help me out. So yeah, we went through something together that not a lot of other people did. I was just thinking on Thanksgiving in 2010, I was in Afghanistan on Thanksgiving. So that's a true brotherhood,
So on good days of being in Afghanistan, what were some of the easiest things in one day?
The easiest things on a good day? If we weren't going on missions, we were working out, and to me, that was pretty easy, because we got to lift weights and listen to music, and that's a pretty easy day. We would usually do some sort of drilling at some point. a cool thing that we would do a lot of times is we'd link up with the pilots and we'd walk out to the airfield and they'd show us a piece of their equipment, like a minigun or, you know, a new piece of aircraft that they were using, and they would teach us about it and give us like a 2 or 3 hour class. And then like the next day I would, you know, I was a mortarman, so we would give them a lesson on how to shoot mortars or how to use a, you know, M4, stuff like that, just different things. Probably the easiest.
So now, what was the most difficult thing you had to do while serving in Afghanistan?
I think the most difficult was probably being in combat. You know, it was like I turned 20 years old in Afghanistan, so I hadn't really been out in the real world too much. So, yeah, probably just some of the more intense missions we had, and you know, we unfortunately had some guys lose their lives, so that's always a tough thing to see happen.
So you said you were 20 years old, so what was it like being outside of the U.S. and still having to learn some things, not going to college and stuff like that?
Well, I was learning a lot of things as I was going, but it became natural to me. I've always liked, you know, martial arts and things like that, so I felt like that warrior kind of lifestyle was my way to go. I think I would have struggled a lot more trying to, you know, be in college and stuff. But yeah, it was a huge adjustment, but it was also kind of a simple way to do things because, you know, you have these guys that are in charge of you and they tell you what to do and you do it. So it's difficult at times, but it's kind of a simple way to live because every day you're told what to do, you complete the task, and that's it.
When was the last time you talked to someone you met in the service?
A week ago.
So
I stay in contact with my friends pretty well. Especially, I have one guy that we were on the mortar team together with, and we were just a 2-man mortar team attached to a platoon, and we talk probably every couple weeks anyway, once a month at least.
So going on these more intense missions, what was going through your mind while being in the middle of these missions?
For me, I wasn't thinking too much. I kind of just, you train so much that you want it to become automatic reaction so you don't have to think, because in combat, I mean, you really don't have the choice to sit back and be like, what should I do? Should I duck behind this wall or should I shoot back? Like, you just have to go off instincts and go off your training. So, you know, kind of like I went through this transition when I was gearing up to go on a mission. You know, we'd all be gearing up together. I just kind of went to my special place and just kind of, all right, this is what you're trained for, and you kind of have to become a different type of person and be really hyper vigilant of everything and really, you know, keeping an eye out. So yeah, I mean, when I left a mission is when kind of like I'd get a sigh of relief, like we'd get back on the helicopter, I'd sit back and relax, and that was kind of like the change of mindset.
What was one of your proudest moments while serving in the Army?
I think probably the proudest moment was graduating RASP. It was really cool. My mom and stepdad came down and surprised me. My dad was there, a lot of family members, and I mean, there wasn't many guys that went all the way from basic training to actually make it to Ranger Battalion. So that was a super proud moment, definitely.
So, what comes to your mind when you hear the word Afghanistan?
Afghanistan, not a good vacation destination. I mean, it's kind of funny to think about how I was there, you know, in Afghanistan, and I just I don't want to go back, but I enjoyed all my experiences over there. So I guess a lot of different things. It's part of my life.
Many people that come back from the wars that they are in bring back a lot of emotions. So, what was one of your darkest moments in Afghanistan?
Um, in Afghanistan, like one of my darkest or like saddest moments, I guess.
Yeah, if you can.
Yeah, I remember when I first got there, probably like 2 days after I had got there, the sergeant, not that I knew, had been killed, and we had to clean all his stuff up so we could like give it to the next person. So I remember just having his helmet and cleaning that and pieces of his, head in it from being shot. So that was pretty intense, especially when I first got there. It was like right off the bat. It's like, all right, you're in Afghanistan now. You're not in Kansas anymore. I was never in Kansas, but.
What was an angry moment you had while serving in the war?
Just, I guess, frustration sometimes with being at the will of higher power. Like I loved the military, but one part about it is you don't really have a choice of where you go and when you go. So I think kind of that can make you angry at times.
What are your thoughts about how the military functions today?
I think it's functions pretty well. We have a very powerful military. I especially, being special ops myself, really think that our most elite soldiers are some of the most elite in the world by far, and obviously the technology and equipment that we have is very high level. I think they should try to higher some of the standards, though, and not use the people we don't need in the military. Keep it elite.
What is one of your fondest memories from your military service?
My fondest memories, I guess just shooting at the range, like the days we were, when we weren't overseas and we were just going out for the day to shoot at the range, and, we have all these different targets we get to set up, and just hanging out with your friends, rocking sunglasses and ear protection and a t-shirt, and just shooting rounds downrange.
What inspired you to stay in Afghanistan and fight each day?
Definitely like going back to the brotherhood thing. I loved my brothers and I hate terrorists, so that's a good combination to keep you going every day. So that's pretty much was my drive. I mean, when I joined the Army, I wanted to deploy. I wanted to go overseas and do part.
How has serving in Afghanistan affected your life today?
I think overall it's probably made me a stronger person, when I helps me put things into perspective sometimes. If I start feeling sorry for myself or having a bad day, I'm like, well, it's not that bad, in the grand scheme of things. And also, it's made me a little more disciplined. I'm willing to work much harder. Like, as you know, Tyler, I professionally fight, so, it's a huge drive behind that. And it just makes me want to excel further in everything that I do.
So, what's your thoughts about more recent terrorist attacks like the one on Paris?
It really makes me sick, makes me mad. Makes me want to do something, but my time's already been served, so what they want is to scare people, and they're trying to do it, and it's a scary world that we live in. Everyone needs to do their best to protect themselves and be aware of their surroundings.
So, later in life, when you have a grandson or daughter, and which will be a little bit, and they came to you asking whether or not they would want to join the military, what advice would you give them?
I would tell them to think long and hard about it. Um, Talk to me for advice. Talk to other veterans for advice. Recruiters can help you out, but they're salesmen. They want you to join the military. So if you talk to a recruiter, you got to be careful. And like I said, take advice from people who have actively served, and explain some of the things that are possibilities. You could be deployed overseas and in combat, and just ask them. I'd completely support it and ask them what they want to do and try to help them out the best I could.
So this can be a touchy question, but did you cause a death? And if not, are you happy that you didn't have to?
If I told you, I'd have to kill you. That's my answer.
So you are still pretty young and you still have a lot left to live. What are some of the things you want to do in the future, and what are some of the things that you do now?
Well, right now, like I said, I fight professionally, which I love. My whole life is based around that. I am a personal trainer. I have a lot of different clients. I love working with the people I work with and trying to make other people strong physically and mentally and to be the best they can be. I teach classes, which is a lot of fun, and it's what I want to continue to do. I would love to own my own business in the fitness world eventually at some point as I get older, and I think it's a great way to keep people healthy mentally and physically. It'll be cool.
Did you acquire any heroic accolades during your military career?
I got a few. I got a coin awarded to me by Admiral Mike Mullen. Our whole platoon did for a certain mission that we did overseas before we left. I got a CIB, which is a combat infantry badge. So that was probably the best award that I received, and then everything else, the Ranger Scrolls, the Ranger Tab, which have a lot of meaning behind them.
So you said you fight professionally, so do you think if you had not have gone into the Army, would that have affected the outcome of what you do today?
My first fight was in high school, so no.
Were you sad or happy to leave the military?
Part of me was sad, part of me was happy. It's kind of mixed emotions, like a lot of times I miss it a lot, but I feel like it was the right decision. If I had re-enlisted, I would have had to stay in for another 4 years, so that's a big commitment. And I thought, I deployed, which was a big part of why I joined the military. I accomplished all those goals. I became a Ranger, and I said, let me take this in my resume. If I ever want to come back to the military, I can. It's not like I can't go back, and let me see what else the world has to offer. And I wanted to be a trainer, and I really wanted to get back into fighting, and you only can do that when you're somewhat young. So it was mixed emotions, the short answer.
What was your family's reaction to you coming home?
Oh, they were super excited. Yeah, definitely. Everyone was happy. Had a big homecoming party, and it was good.
So just to wrap it up, what are your thoughts on war?
War in general, I feel like sometimes it's a necessary evil, unfortunately. It would be nice if the whole world could live in peace, but unfortunately that probably won't be the case as far as the rest of history. So I think, there is bad people in this world, and they need to be controlled, or they may take over in power eventually. So it's up to us good guys to keep them in check.
If you could recommend not just a son or daughter, but just a regular person, if you could recommend what they would want to do in the war, or if they wanted to join, what would you say?
As far as a job, what would I tell them to do?
Yes.
I would, I'd really have to leave it up to them. You know, it would be like someone coming to me and saying, you know, what courses should I take in college? And it's really what drives you. You can do anything you want in the military. I mean, if you want to do something in the medical field, that's an option. If you want to be an engineer, that's an option. If you want to be infantry like I was, that's an option. If you want to work more on technology, that's an option. There's a lot of different options. There's a lot of different jobs. So I would tell them to find a list of the jobs, research for themselves what the jobs entail, and then you could, you know, run the idea by me.
Thank you for participating in our project.
You're welcome, my friend.